You know, I tend to do this. Hurry through complex data. A caller brought up one of the congressmen in the whitewash impeachment hearing Friday trying to claim that it was disinfo that the White House lied about uranium from Africa, when the White House has been caught and has had to admit it was a lie. They didn't screw up on intelligence, they falsified it. And that's admitted in 1,000 sources. Then I went to one of the little-known cases. Remember, they said they found anthrax trucks. Iraq was behind the anthrax attack. It turned out it was U.S. weaponized, and now even mainstream media is saying the government probably launched the attacks. They even have a History Channel clip where they say that. But to make a long story short, there are hydrogen balloons that they use in the military that the British and the U.S. sold to Iraq when they were our allies back in the 1980s during the Iran-Iraq War. And these trucks direct the cables and the hydrogen. They pump up the little balloons, the blimps. They're tethered. They go up in a battlefield situation. They have video cameras on them, and then they zoom in on enemy formations and movements because, you know, they can send these up 30,000, 40,000 feet in some cases, but normally they're tethered about 10,000 feet, and then they can direct artillery. Now, they had UN inspectors in there and U.S. inspectors in there during the early and mid-'90s, and so to a lot of the American people, again, they went on the news and said, look, anthrax trucks, when quote, we had sold them to them, had nothing to do with anthrax. It'd be like if I went on the news and showed a hot water heater in somebody's house and said, this is a nuclear weapon. It would just be a lie, folks. It's an insult of your intelligence. And that's the type of just lying they did. All right, I digress. The caller had brought up a story that's on Infowars.com, and it's sourced by two mainstream newspapers, and then where a congressman was, you can go read about it, we don't have time to get into it, was questioned about a Democratic congressman about why aren't you for impeachment? And he said, well, because they will launch an attack on Iran as a political diversion and declare martial law here domestically if you try to impeach George Bush. Now, that's what all these White House insiders have been telling me. That's what Republican memos say that we've posted and written articles about. And so we're in a very dangerous situation. Now forget this congressman saying that. I have a Fox News clip up on Infowars.com right now from Friday. Dick Morris on Fox, Iran to be attacked no matter who is elected. And he says that. He says, Israel, I've talked to Israel, they plan to attack before the election, early October, late September, early October. Go watch it for yourself. So Iran will attack back, and then there'll be such a huge quagmire that people will elect John McCain. I mean, there they are right there saying what the Democratic congressman is saying. And you can go watch the Fox News clip right now. I'm not going to play it here because there's issues. We can play short clips of things. It was just another court ruling on that in another case, but I just don't play something unless I absolutely have to. Just go watch it for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? All right, let's, because I can link to the YouTube, and we are linked to it. That's YouTube's issue. Let's go ahead. You know what? I'm going to play a Vincent Bugliosi clip. We're going to come back and play more clips and then take your calls. Heidi, Bill, Scott, George, Paul, Rod, Roger, Tim. It's just, we'll get to all of you. But right now, Vincent Bugliosi, here he is in the impeachment hearings Friday.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I have been told that the rules of this House dictate that although I can quote what President George Bush said, I am forbidden from accusing him of a crime or even any dishonorable conduct, only being allowed to use the words Bush administration or administration officials. This will not make for the best of articulations, but I'll do the best that I can. In my book here, The Prosecution of George W. Bush for Murder, I present evidence that proves beyond all reasonable doubt that Bush administration officials took this nation to war in Iraq on a lie under false pretenses, and therefore under the law. They are guilty of murder for the deaths of over 4,000 young American soldiers who have died so far in Iraq fighting their war. And let's not forget the over 100,000 innocent Iraqi men, women, children, and babies who have died horrible, violent deaths because of this war. I am fully aware that the charge I just made is a very serious one, but let me say that at this stage of my career, I don't have time for fanciful reveries. I never in a million years would propose a murder prosecution of Bush administration officials if I didn't believe there was more than enough evidence to convict them and that I was standing on strong legal ground. What is some of that evidence? Because of time constraints, I'm only going to mention one piece of evidence today. I have documentary evidence that when George Bush told the nation on the evening of October 7, 2002, that Saddam Hussein was an imminent threat to the security of this country, he was telling millions of unsuspecting Americans the exact opposite of what his own CIA had told administration officials just 6 days earlier in a classified report on October the 1st, that Hussein was not an imminent threat. But it gets worse. On October the 4th, the Bush administration put out an unclassified summary version of the classified report so they could give it to Congress and the American people. And this unclassified version came to be known as the White Paper. And in this White Paper, which I have in front of me, the conclusion of U.S. intelligence that Saddam Hussein was not an imminent threat to the security of this country was completely deleted. Every single one of these all-important words was taken out. So Congress and the American people never saw any of this. Since we are talking about a matter of war and peace, with the safety and lives of millions of human beings at that time hanging in the balance, and with Congress about to vote in 1 week on whether or not it should authorize George Bush to go to war in Iraq, what could possibly be worse? And I repeat, what could possibly be worse and more criminal than the Bush administration deliberately keeping this all-important conclusion from Congress and the American people? The terrible reality is that the Bush administration has gotten away with thousands upon thousands of murders, and we, America, the American people, cannot let them do this. During the question and answer period, if requested, I will give you words from George Bush's own mouth that I believe will prove shocking to most of you folks in this chamber. On December 9th, 1998, a previous House Judiciary Committee issued 4 articles of impeachment against President Bill Clinton for doing something infinitely less significant than what the evidence shows the Bush administration did in this case. Indeed, it is a calumny, a slander of the highest rank, to even talk about them in the same breath or on the same page. If a House Judiciary Committee could recommend that President Clinton be impeached for what he did, as they say in the law, a fortiori, all the more so, with all the highly incriminating evidence that I set forth in my book, much of it documentary, you shouldn't have any difficulty making a criminal referral to the Department of Justice to commence a criminal investigation of the Bush administration to determine whether first-degree murder charges should be brought against certain members of this administration. And I hereby strongly urge you to do so. Whether Republican or Democrat, all Americans should be absolutely outraged over what the Bush administration has done. How dare they do what they did? How dare they?
All right, we'll come back. We'll finish up with Bugliosi. There's a lot more, but then we're going to play a Bob Barr clip and some others, and then more of your phone calls. But we think it's important to play this because it's big news, it's important, and the media is ignoring it. But we're not. We'll be right back.
Gold.